Hi folks, this is Lloyd Wright with Stellar Physical Medicine. I'm a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about emotional health. And as many of you know, I'm a big fan of 5 elements, but what many of you may not know is I spent the earlier part of my life working a lot actually in mental health. What I've learned to do is combine the East and the West in this regard. And I've garnered some interesting insights that I'd like to kind of share with you today. The 5 element concepts of emotions are quite interesting, and as we begin to apply them in a practical manner to our daily life, they can sometimes be quite insightful. So to start with, I'm just going to briefly go over the 5 elements, and then I'm going to focus in on one particular one that's pertinent to this particular time of year. So as many of you might recall from some of my other recordings, our 5 elements include fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. The emotions related to each one really indicate a predominance of the emotion in that person's personality. When there are organ imbalances, it is thought that that emotional content will tend to come up more frequently or more predominantly. Conversely, if somebody has too much of that emotion, it will tend to damage that organ and throw it more out of balance and create more organ dysfunction. So I'm not going to go into the other functions on these elements, but I'm just going to go right into the basic emotions. And starting from the top here, the fire element really relates to the emotion of joy. But I always kind of think joy/anxiety because I see a lot of my patients with heart imbalances sometimes will get anxious. But when I think of joy, we all say, well, that's great, that's a normal, wonderful emotion. But there's also a thing of abnormal joy. People, when it becomes unusual or abnormal, that would also indicate an imbalance. Next on the list with the earth element is worrying or thinking too much. On the metal element we have grief or sadness, and the kidney, water element with kidney bladder, we have the emotions of fear. Conversely, the absence of fear or excess or abnormal courage. And in the liver element is the emotion of anger or decision making and willpower. Today, it's fall season here. We just hit November 2nd. And so in the fall time is the time of year for metal, which means the process of grief and grieving. So when we think about this, what does grieving really mean? Not an emotion that we like to think of or have much fun about. However, grief is really the attachment to something, a condition or something or somebody that we no longer have access to. And what causes the grief? It's that separation. It's the loss, the sense of loss typically is what causes the grief. I'll never forget an old saying that the Buddha is said to have said, which is, the root of all pain and suffering is attachment. Well, if this is true, it's never more true in this particular case. If we can learn to be detached or learn to release our attachment to whatever those things are, we can get through our grieving process much faster. Now consider, if attachment in an emotional sense is true, look at the function of the organs that it relates to. We have the lung and the large intestine. Now think about it symbolically. You have the lung, and which is absolutely, utterly vital to your life, minute to minute. But you cannot, you must let go of one breath in order to inhale the next breath. So the process of letting go of one brings in the other. So let go of the toxins, you bring in the nourishment. Now the large intestine is also an organ of letting go. You have to let go of the waste products in order for your digestive system to have room for the nutritious food that you're taking in at the other end of your digestive system. So both cases are great examples of the need to let go. So in an emotional context, it is very similar. We need to think about letting go of our emotional entanglements, our emotional attachments. Yes, both the good ones as well as the bad ones. It is through the letting go of emotional attachments that we can bring in new and inspired thinking. Let's be honest, if you have something that was wonderful that happened and all you do is think about that, you're going to get stuck in a routine. And all routines basically become boring sooner or later, and we will find ways to get into mischief just to change the routine. far wiser, I suggest, to think about ways to stay ahead of the curve by letting go of things in life and bringing new things into life. Keep life renewed, keep life fresh. So kind of give these matters some thought, and hopefully you can use that and begin to let go of the things that you don't like in life and set yourself up to be creative, to move through life. Think about it in advance before we become entrenched and attached emotionally to both the good and the bad that winds up locking us into a particular frame of mind or emotional state. So that's my brief assessment for the fall season. I hope you've enjoyed that and gained a little insight. And stay tuned, we will be getting more videos up soon.